It can be like a mind fog, a hesitation in making a decision, avoiding a certain conversation, or getting stuck and not knowing what to do next. Or like your head is going to explode with your to-do list, and it can give you a scary sense that you won't get it all done in time. It's wedding overwhelm, and Yvette is here to crush it. After 22 years in weddings, Yvette Sitters from Manage My Wedding has seen it all, and she believes that it's only getting worse. With so many distractions on social media and well-meaning but conflicting advice and expectations from your family and friends, wedding overwhelm is commonplace for many modern engaged couples. But this doesn't mean that we can't change that. In this episode, Yvette shares some foundational advice about how to set yourself up for wedding planning success from the get-go. And if you're in the messy middle, a couple of strategies to get you back on track. She also shares why delegating tasks, especially to your fiancé, sometimes doesn't work, and how, with a few key shifts in your thinking, you can get what you want done when you want them done. Take a few tasks off your plate and enjoy not just the wedding day itself, but at least some of the planning as well. Let's get into it. Unbridely is a community of pro-wedding vendors who believe in freedom and integrity in weddings, giving you options, solutions, tips and tricks to create the experience and memories that you and your fiancé really want and deserve. Because we believe that weddings are a team sport. With how-tos, stories and interviews with recently married couples, we find out what went right and what they'd change if they could go back and do it all over again. I'm Camille, and welcome to the Unbridely podcast. Hi, Yvette.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to talk to you. I love talking to you, so thank you.
Same. We've already said before we started recording, we could chat all day long.
Yes.
And so we've had to narrow this down. What I really want to start with is you have an epic career of 22 years in weddings so far. Absolutely enormous. Tell us a little bit about the highlights.
Oh, yeah. It is 22 years. It makes you feel very old when you say it like that. But, I've really, in that time, I have worked with every type of wedding that you can imagine. I have done 12 people on a secluded sandbank. I've done Indian weddings for 2,000 people in London on Park Lane. A very, very mixed bag. But highlights for me, oh my gosh, there are so many. But I think highlights for me personally, and I think the same goes for wedding guests, is when you have those couples where you can see how in love they are and how much they've taken on their personalities to create their dream wedding, and that really shines and you feel all the emotions with them, and they really stand out for me, those weddings. And, they're the ones that I remember. Like I was explaining to someone the other day, everyone remembers where they were on September 11, right? Like we all remember that, but we don't know what we were doing the day before or the day after because there's emotions attached. And it's the same with weddings. Those ones that really stand out for me and are highlights are the ones where you remember the emotions and those happy feelings, really.
I love the way that you put that. And you're absolutely right. The emotion carries the weight of relevance of a wedding.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah, that's really cool. So today, with all of that background knowledge, all of the things that you've seen, all the things that you've helped plan, today, Yvette, I need you to help my listeners because I jumped on, we had a chat on your show, the Manage My Wedding podcast last year, and we had a chat about a few different things. But I know one of your specialities in helping couples is through wedding overwhelm. What is wedding overwhelm?
Yeah, wedding overwhelm. It's a word that rings loud to anyone planning a wedding, and it occurs at any different stage of wedding planning. You get engaged and you're like on this high, right? You just all these happy emotions and it's the best time in your life. And then you have to start planning and you instantly sometimes can feel that overwhelm because you don't know where to start. It's something you have never, ever done before. And there is so much to do and we can't hide that. There is so much to do. So there is that part of wedding overwhelm that can initially kick in for some. Then there's wedding overwhelm that happens towards the end where that nervous energy build up that creates overwhelm and can spiral into anxiety and the whole, have I forgotten to do something? Is everything going to go right on the day? And then there's that wedding overwhelm that kind of drips in and out during the planning as well. So you've kind of got 3 different stages of where that overwhelm can feel like it's coming in. And overwhelm is often the sense of anxiousness, really, I think. And sometimes we don't always know that feeling because we haven't had it before.
Do you think it's something that only the person who's feeling it knows? Or do you think overwhelm can present itself in other ways?
It definitely presents itself in different ways. Sometimes people will internalize it and really keep it to themselves. And I'm very good at doing that myself. So I know that feeling, and it can feel like there is so much to do, you don't know what to do, or stuck. Some people can feel really stuck in the planning and they get frozen and they don't move forward. And so they stay in that overwhelm for a very long time. Some people will show it in anger, and anger is usually from anxiety. So some people will show it in anger. Some people will show it in frustration to their vendors, and they will show it to their partner, to their parents. It's different for everybody and everyone's different personality. But one of the biggest reasons that I often have seen overwhelm come is because a couple hasn't sat down at the very, very beginning and they haven't said, okay, what is our wedding vision? How do we see as a couple our day panning out, really? What is the dream wedding look like to us and only us, and not our parents and our aunties and our uncles or even the venue or anyone? But how does that day look to us? Part of it is visual, but it's not just about the visuals of a wedding. So not just having pink roses or, a veil or no veil, but how does it look to us as a couple, as in, is it small? Is it big? Is it eloping? Is it in a wine region? Is it the beach? How do we as a couple vision the perfect day? Not what we're being told and not what social media is also telling us, right? But that's a whole conversation and a whole podcast episode of its own, isn't it?
It is. It's huge. So do you see then, Yvette, couples who do have that initial discussion, do you think they benefit from less overwhelm?
Absolutely. But they have to revisit it as well. So there's, what is our vision for us as a couple? What are the do's and the don'ts for our wedding? Working through what as a couple you both see as the perfect day. And then constantly making every decision based on that wedding vision and always reflecting on that and knowing, does that suit our vision? Auntie Jo is telling us that we have to invite all her kids, but that wasn't part of our vision. We were just sticking to, immediate family and our 10 best friends. So it's constantly revisiting that vision all the time, which I think sometimes we might set the vision at the start and then we forget to look at it again. Or as we're going along, we're like, our life has changed. Does that vision still suit our life when we got engaged, especially if you have a long engagement? But it's really, really constantly something that you have to revisit, and make every decision around that. And that is also why I think people get caught up on not making decisions, which is such an important component. But so many people get stuck and can't move forward because they can't make a decision or they want to keep changing their mind. And again, it's usually because maybe we haven't set a vision at the start, or maybe we've deviated off track. So we've booked a venue that really wasn't what we wanted and didn't suit both of our visions. And now we're finding it hard to make decisions around that because it's ultimately not what we had in mind. So it really is something that you have to constantly reconnect with during the whole planning process, is just that vision and making decisions based around that. And then leaving out the noise. Everyone wants to tell you their wedding story. when you get engaged, right? Everyone.
Got a theory about that. Yes, yes.
Oh, you need to share it because they just they're so excited. Everyone's so excited, right? Oh, my wedding was the best wedding ever. Everyone wants to share their wedding and their perfect wedding and use my vendor. You have to do this or don't do this. So you're getting all of that. Then you're getting the pressure of your family as well. Your mum or your dad, because they gave you some money and they want to have a say in everything, even though it's not their vision. So yeah, it's all very, very intertwined, and it's so important that everything is about you and your partner, ultimately.
That's really good, Yvette. And that's really fascinating too when you sit down and go, okay, so scope creep, when we start to say yes to things that we weren't going to, it wasn't in the original vision, that can cause overwhelm.
Mm-hmm.
But if I let people get in my ear too much and I have a massive knot, a massive block, and I can't decide things and I'm stuck, that can also cause overwhelm. So do you think it's getting worse? Do you think more couples are experiencing overwhelm more often when they're planning their weddings?
Oh, yes. Yep, I definitely do. And it seems to be a trend that is getting worse. I see a lot of it coming from social media, a lot of it. Sometimes people wanting to also outdo the other wedding, but I went to that wedding and it was so amazing and I want my wedding to be like that, even though it mightn't actually be your vision. But I think social media and Pinterest, yes, I love Pinterest, don't get me wrong, but you have to be on Pinterest for the right reason. You have to know your vision, and then you have to go to Pinterest for that vision, and you have to key in the words in Pinterest like, navy blue bridesmaids dresses, not bridesmaids dresses, so you have to be using things in that way because we're just seeing so much and everything is beautiful, right? We want it all. We want it all. And we want to tag everything and save everything. And at the end of the day, usually we can't afford it all or it doesn't suit our vision. But I think what people forget is when they're wedding planning, usually everyone around you is not wedding planning. You are. They are not. So they are not seeing all the big, bright, shiny objects that you keep thinking you need to have. So they turn up to your wedding and they think it's magic and perfect anyway because they don't know any different. They don't know all the options that are out there. It's not coming up in their algorithm and in their feed. And that is overwhelm instantly when you're seeing all that.
So there could be overwhelm at the start. Yeah. There could be overwhelm where we're in the middle. There could be overwhelm at the end when we're tying up all the loose ends. Well, first of all, let's go to this couple that's just gotten engaged. Mm-hmm. So are you, apart from getting our act together, getting our heads together, getting our vision together at the start, are there any other ways that we can mitigate the overwhelm before it gets us?
Yeah, there definitely is. Firstly, like I mentioned, the vision. Let's say, tick, you've done that, or you haven't because you're like, I don't even know how to come up with that. Then where are you going to for your information and where are you going to get the support? Because it is like a second full-time job. And sometimes we don't always have the time to prioritize the wedding, or we might think we have all the time that we do, but we can't work out our vision because we just don't have the time to really spend that it needs. So it's so important that you find where you're going to start to get the support from. Some people can afford a wedding planner, some cannot, but there are so many amazing tools at the moment and people that you can follow and use. And it is really good to find someone that you see that is your personality and that you want to follow. And you're like, yeah, they are my type. Try not to get amongst following 10 different wedding experts because you just end up confused. Pick one or two that you really, really gel with and follow their advice and their lead and use their tools and get support, because we can all have a checklist, but there's usually a checklist needed for a checklist when it comes to wedding planning, right? So yeah, support is so critical from the get-go, really.
I really love that, Yvette. And please share with my listeners what you offer as far as helping overwhelmed couples at the start, because I know you've got tools that help that, right?
I do. Oh, thank you. I don't talk about them when I'm talking on podcasts because I just want to share all my knowledge. But thank you for asking. I created a wedding planning app. It's free to download in the App Store and Google Play. And I created it because, as you mentioned, I've been in the wedding industry 22 years now. But when I got married, I'd been in the wedding industry about 13 years, not as long, but still a decent amount of time. And I knew weddings back to front. But then when I started wedding planning myself, I was like, oh, this is a lot. And I'm a wedding planner. I've been in the wedding and events industry my whole life. What? Why? Why is there so much to do? And I couldn't find one source where I could find everything and follow a lead step by step. So I created the app because I really wanted to help couples know what to do and what came next. So yeah, I created the app, which is free, and you can manage your guest list and your budget and your to-do list in there and your timings, which is so important, which people really don't realize how important their timings are. And then I created a podcast after that, and I now have a wedding planning course for those who want their hands held even more. And they are the sort of things that you need to go and look for to find to help support you and make that, journey enjoyable and calm and organized and relaxed so that you can sit back on the day, sipping champagne and feeling amazing about everything and knowing everything's going to be perfect. So
I love that point, Yvette, because there is that one day, and hopefully that one day goes fairly well and you love it. But, you've got all that time beforehand. I hate the thought of these couples out there being stressed out of their brains and then having one perfect day. That's not a good deal. So you've got these great tools, and I'll put the link in the show notes for those tools as well. I feel like if you're halfway through, I love the Shakespearean quote, that you're halfway through and going back is just as bad as going forward. So you're right in the middle. You're in the messy middle. You're starting to feel the overwhelm. What would you say to couples in that situation? Let's face facts. You've always been the planner and the organizer. And your fiancé's eyes glaze over a little when you start talking about the details of your wedding day. But you really need someone to share this all with, to bounce ideas off, and someone who's not going to ruin the surprises, but also be supportive and maybe even offer a different perspective. So when you're needing to get a second opinion about your bridesmaid, your in-laws, or your first dance song, Unbridely Couples is your safe space. Unbridely hosts a private Facebook community where modern engaged couples can share ideas, chat, and solve problems, and generally just get freaking excited about their wedding. We also have a curated list of experienced wedding vendor professionals in there to offer suggestions and tips, insight into how to get the most out of your big day. But with no unsolicited DMs or pushy sales tactics, it's just not what Unbridely is about. So you can search for the Unbridely Couples group on Facebook or just click on the link in the show notes. I'll see you in there.
When you're in the messy middle, it's usually because you have a lot of decisions to make and you have a lot of people saying a lot of things to you. So when you're feeling overwhelmed in that middle part, firstly, think about, is it nerves? Because sometimes that can be something that is real. Am I just getting really nervous because this is all really happening? Or am I just too busy that I need even more support than I realized? Or am I stuck because I can't make decisions to move along? And go back to that detailed to-do list that you should have and see where you're at and what have you done and what do you need. And speak to those professional vendors that you've also already gone and contracted with. It's really important to go back to them and talk to them and say, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Are we up to date? Do you need anything from me at this stage? Because sometimes that simple sentence can open a floodgate. The venue might say to you, we're fine, but you are going to need to do this and this in the next 2 months. Or your celebrant like you is obviously then going to dictate where it's at as well. So sometimes lean back on those people and ask them. But yeah, usually in the middle, the overwhelm kicks in because they're not sticking to their vision. They're not making decisions to move them forward. So they're stuck, or they've booked some things in and they were all the big things, and then they're not sure what little things follow.
Would you ever advocate for a couple just to step back, to stop planning for a sec? Or is your thinking just push forward?
It depends how far out the wedding is. If it's in a month's time, no, you probably. But I always say not every day should be wedding planning day. Like, that is something at the start you need to decide. What days do I set aside for wedding planning? Because when you're the head wedding planner, and those listening usually are, you want to talk about it every single day. And you sometimes want to be working on things every single day, and your partner does not. And having that balance is just so important, because it'll take over your life very quickly. But it's just like, and I know I don't like the word self-care because it's really a popular trending word, but it's still, you've still got to have self-care around that. And if you don't have days where you stop and take breaks, or a couple of weeks breaks and go for holiday and don't even think about it, then yeah, overwhelm kicks in very, very quickly, or getting stuck kicks in because you're doing nothing else but that. So definitely taking time out and giving your relationship what it needs as well, because that's the reason why you're getting married. You are marrying the love of your life, and that is the most important thing. And if you're so caught up in the planning and you forget to nurture your relationship, on the day's not going to be everything you ever imagined because you forgot to reconnect during. So yeah, it's really, really important. I'm glad you brought that up.
That's making me feel better. I'm not even planning a wedding. Thank you. Thank you, Yvette. And so we've got some remedies there. Basically, set ourselves on the right track to start with, to use apps that work for us, to follow people planners in particular who we resonate with, who are talking our language. That can really help. Stepping away. Are there any other special bits of advice that you're able to share, Yvette?
Delegating. It falls under support as well, but not just the professional support, but those that you love and trust around you. And it doesn't mean always bridesmaids, because sometimes they're busier than you, or they have children, or you're not having any. So that doesn't always have to necessarily mean that. But who in your circle, can you really, really lean on that you can trust and that will want to help you? And I have to say, you might be listening now and be going, oh, everyone's busy, because everyone's busy right these days, especially in 2023. We're all saying we're busy. But everyone wants to help someone wedding planning. Like, they really, truly do. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a wedding planner, but it is honestly true. People want to help you because people know how much work goes into a wedding. Even when they haven't got married, everyone knows. So it's really important that even if you are like me and a control freak, that you ask for help and support and you delegate jobs. And it's important you delegate jobs in the lead up and on the day and after the day. I have a checklist where people can go through and purely assign all those things, because there's things you can do in the lead up and you don't realize now, but things like proof checking all the place cards to make sure everything is spelt correctly, proofing the invites, someone to help you pack the invites, someone that helps you pack the favors, whatever it is. Your mother-in-law who's annoying you, not all will, but if she is, give her a job that doesn't matter and doesn't mean a lot to you that she can go off and do. And that then, one, helps people not harass you, makes them feel included, and it takes a job away that might not be of interest to you. And that includes your partner. It's really, really important that you include your partner in the planning. It is their day also. You might think they're not interested and that they don't like organising, but work out what is it that my partner really, truly loves. Like, I know for me, my partner obviously was like, oh, I don't want to step on your toes, but he loves music, he loves cars, and he does dress really well. So I knew that he could go off and organise his own suits. Yes, he would come back to me and say, hey, do you reckon this would be fine with the bridesmaid? But he went off and did that. He could go off and do the cars. He could put the music together. So find what suits them and their personalities and give them those tasks to do and tell them when you need them done by. That's really critical too, because if they have those little, deadlines and what you need, they'll get it done. And that even goes for your friends that you're asking. If you have a friend who, writes music, they're a perfect person to say, hey, can you put my music list together? Because that's going to take me hours. So, yeah, delegating jobs and asking for help, no matter how much of a control freak you are. It's really, really important. And that flows through on the day, having a list of someone that can go to the venue and check the setup or go and hand things over to the venue on the day that, you can't get there to do, or takes your bags from where you got ready to your hotel, all those little tiny, and there's a lot of those little tiny things that actually have to be done. And then someone at the end of the night who collects all your items so that your gifts aren't left there and goes around the tables to make sure everything's been collected. So there are so many little things. And if those things are taken care of and delegated out on the day, you are so much more calmer because you don't have everyone coming to you asking you a million things and putting you into overwhelm. And that works for the whole duration of the planning as well.
I couldn't agree more. I love Yvette, especially when you said when you're delegating, make sure that you actually have an endpoint, a due date, I need this done by, because that's the biggest fear, right, of a type A planner.
Yes.
Is no one's going to do it as well as me or on time, and I can't trust that everything's going to tick along as it should. So, yeah, putting those little requirements in place. I need you to check these place cards, but I need it done by next Wednesday. Is that possible? And making sure people have the capacity to do it, then it's going to be done. They know what's expected. Because I don't know about you, but I see it a lot in wedding Facebook groups where, in particular, brides, the way they preface it is rant coming, and then they start to talk about how they've asked for help, which you've just said that we should be doing.
Yeah.
But then the person hasn't done it or is taking forever or hasn't even started maybe bridesmaids, dress shopping, something like that. Is that the best way, just to set out your expectations early, do you think? Are there any other ways to motivate people?
Expectations, and also saying, are you happy to help do this? Because then you're giving them the opportunity to say, actually, no, I'm not comfortable, or I don't have the time. So setting those expectations, agreeing with them on what needs to be done, giving clear instructions as well. If you want your mother-in-law to hunt down confetti, tell her, I want gold circles, eco-friendly, right? So you're giving her what you want and it's still fitting your vision and your partner, but she can spend all those hours looking for it. So, giving expectations and clear set of guidelines of what you're looking for with a deadline. It's so important. So important.
And then I can imagine that all those little checklists in your head, because it's great to have them on an app and everything, Yvette, and I'm sure people are going through it, but it's still in your head, isn't it? When you're lying there awake at night, those checklists and, I've got to do this. And are you a go to bed and wake up and write something in a little notebook next to your bed or anything like that? Is that the kind of planner you are?
I have to write down everything. And I think because we are in this busy society and have a business and a family and everything else, you have to write everything down. Everything needs to be written down. And it's the same for your budget. Every time you spend $2, I tell my app users and bridal couples, go straight into the app and update your budget straight away with every dollar. And whether you're using a spreadsheet or whatever it is that you're using, go straight there every time something happens so you do not forget, and put it straight in there. And if you're a pen and paper person, the same goes. Write every single thing down, because otherwise we just lose track and our brain just wants to explode and we're stuck and overwhelmed because we've got everything in here.
So we're cleaning it all out and we're getting it in an ordered form, and we know when we're meant to be doing things. There's some little jobs that we can hand off to people. That's so good, Yvette. Any other ways that to nix this overwhelm?
Yeah, they're probably the main things, for me. I think they're the main reasons we get into overwhelm, but also just lean on the professionals and the vendors that you've really, gone with, because you picked them for a reason. And let's hope you picked them because they fitted your personalities and your vision, because that is the first step that I keep referring back to because it's so important. But lean on them. You really need to lean on them and talk to them and share how you're feeling, because they want the best for you and your day. They are in this industry for a reason, and they love weddings as much as you are loving the fact you're going to get married. And no one can be in the wedding industry if they don't love weddings. Like it's a really special place to work. It is a beautiful place. It's a rewarding place. There's nothing better than seeing people marry the love of their life. And as a vendor, you want their wedding day to be perfect because you've done your job. So lean on them and get the support and the tools off them that you need. And the same goes if you're not feeling it, or you're listening to this episode now going, oh my gosh, I didn't go with my heart and my vision. Sometimes you have to revisit that too, and sometimes people do make changes, and that's okay. But always go with your gut and your heart and what it's telling you, because it's usually always right.
Spot on. It always is right. It always lets you know. Yeah, you're right, Yvette. You're right. Follow your gut, follow your heart, clear everything out of your brain. You have a really great experience in the lead up and on the day. Mm-hmm. So good. Thank you so much for all your incredible advice and experience, your point of view. How can engaged couples find you and find your app and follow you, Yvette?
Yeah, so they can go to managemywedding.com and everything is there. There are links to Google Play or into the Apple App Store, or on Instagram, come and say hello. I love chatting to people in my DMs about their weddings. So you can find me, Manage My Wedding. But yeah, I'd love to connect and talk. And if anyone's ever feeling any overwhelm, I absolutely love helping people talk through that and, messaging with them and working out where that's coming from and trying to help them move past that. So please come and say hello on Instagram, and I would love to help you make sure that you have a beautiful day.
You're like a fairy godmother for wedding couples. This is so good, Yvette. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope to chat with you real soon.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Bye. That about wraps it up for this episode of the Unbridely podcast. For the links and resources we mentioned, please head to the show notes. And if you love the show, please review and subscribe on the podcast platform you're on now so you don't miss out on a single episode. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, weddings are a team sport. Catch you soon.